Thank you very much, Nargis, for inviting this roundtable, which is very interesting experience for me. And actually, past 8-9 years, I focused on the budget transparency, public accountability issues at Soros Foundation Kazakhstan, which is actually challenging for Kazakhstan. Yes, to implement, from one hand, efficiently implement state programs and use public funds for the, like as it's stated in progress, for the prosperity of Kazakhstan. Actually, first of all, I would like to focus on the Republican budget. What is this about? About current programs, state programs. We will discuss a little bit about the different approaches and international indexes and key findings, which would be interesting for you and to see how these programs applied to a reality of Kazakhstan. Yes. So as you see here, Republican budget parameters from 2008 till 2017, like positive. So income and expenditures raising so far, at least as it's planned. Yes, in draft of the law on Republican budget for 2015-2017. At the same time, I would like to say that according to the Supreme Audit Institutions, every year state budget revised approximately 20 times. So it's actually not the final figures of the budget parameters. To GDP, this budget parameters, which is quite okay also. Income, let's see which is income, consists of tax income, which is every time higher tax income, it's of course bigger. But you can see also here transfers from the national fund, which is increasing also. Here the same in percentage as a share of the whole income. So we can see that here the trend as more the income generated by tax, so less we have transfers from the national fund. But actually, last statement of the president says, in addition to that, says that in order to eliminate the negative effects, it will be like withdrawn 3 billion per year during next 3 years. Okay, deficit, as also Professor Nadim said, it's also like quite okay. It's less than 3% since 2011, and here is in million tenge, you can see, and in percentage GDP. So what is the major expenditures of the state budget? You can see here that the social security, it's almost 1/3 of all the expenditures, which is pension fund, or pensions paid to the pensioners in Kazakhstan, social payments to vulnerable people, disabled people, and so on. And you can see here that we, if also we're stating that Kazakhstan on the implementation of the huge and long-term programs, which is Kazakhstan 2050, and we are planning to be in one of the 30 developed states in the globe until 2015. It's not making the economy like competitive. Yes, spending 1/3 of the whole budget on just expenditures which not generate additional money. Okay, 7 minor expenditures you can see here also, like debt services, agriculture, which is actually would be considered as our long-term asset, yes, from the state budget, like consumes very small amount of funds. So what is the Kazakhstan 2050 program? It's focused on seven dimensions: human capital, regional development, green growth, innovation and science, energy sector, public administration and integration. But at the same time, it's very good classification of the like long-term development, yes. But at the same time, we have mid-term state programs till 2020-2015, which is industrialization program, healthcare program, education, language, housing, business, employment, information, and then agriculture. It's called cities program, housing and service modernization, water supply, access to water, and productivity. A lot of programs which is under implementation of the central government and also like financed by Republican budget. But the efficiency of the so you can see here very clear dimensions, but at the same time how these 7 dimensions correspond to these programs, developmental like mid-term programs. It's very questionable. For instance, I think that the major approach of the central government is exclusion, not inclusion. So, which means that from the, for instance, in education, yes, we are constructing Nazarbayev intellectual schools, which takes 23 billion tenge this year. 33 billion goes to Nazarbayev University, and if we see that, like we can see that it's 12% of all the expenditures on education. Before that, since 2007-2008, it was like 40% of the whole all education budget. So you can imagine that 20 Nazarbayev intellectual schools around Kazakhstan and 7,500 schools, secondary schools, which is underfinanced by the central government. So what? That's why I'm saying about not inclusion but exclusion, and in terms of access to quality education. And of course, in rural areas, the education is much less quality raised than in cities. Okay, and healthcare, if we see the budget of the on the healthcare, 96% of the total budget distributed among by the Ministry of Health, distributed among oblasts and cities of Almaty and Astana. So itself, ministry use only 4%, not utilize, and use even like very small percent. So what does it mean in case like mainly Ministry of Health performs as the distributor of money, like financial institutions, yes, not like policy maker in the field of like healthcare system. Employment, if we talk about employment, we have employment program like till 2020, and it states as an aim reduction of the poverty from 8% to 6%. Actually, since 2002, according to our government, we don't have a poverty. Kazakhstan actually don't have like poor people and so on. And actually, before that, we had a UNDP program functioning in Kazakhstan. And also in program, it stated that unemployment rate should be not much than 5.5%. But since in this program actually adopted in 2011, actually since that time we have an unemployment rate which is even less. And productivity program we have till 2020, and the total budget of this program 26. Actually, you may remember that the president said that if we talk in terms of electricity and this heating, 23% of this 23% of the like this hot water and so on lost in this our pipes. Yes, so the efficiency is very low. For instance, in South Korea, it's like around 7% or 5%. So and it also affects our economy because economy are not working properly and efficiently as it could be. So a productivity program takes 26 billion and mainly focused on consulting and information exchange with the business. So of course for the general public it's very good to hear that we have such kind of program which is called Productivity 2020. But if we say and realistically like see what aims and what the task of the program and what resources allocated for this program, it actually like not it just seems as a joke, yes. And for I also saw the report, update report on this program. They state that even they considering 156 businesses, and only last year they supported, in fact, supported two firms. What kind of productivity this program could mean for Kazakhstan? It's not actually very like it's serious, yes. And actually, in order to implement this program, the joint stock company, quasi-governmental, was established, which actually consults businesses to apply for the Development Bank of Kazakhstan to get some like long-term lease financing. And actually, Development Bank of Kazakhstan, which is also governmentally owned bank, finance such kind of like let's say projects, yes, long-term projects. According to the Supreme Audit Institutions in Kazakhstan, in 2010, for developmental programs was spent 2.8 trillion tenge, which is actually a bit higher than we spent on the social security expenditures, yes, for pension funds and so on. So almost the same amount of money goes for developmental programs. But at the same time, almost 8% was used with violation of budget legislation or other legislation. So it's not so much efficient also. For instance, in healthcare, Ministry of Healthcare, even it performs as a financial institution, did not spend 12% of its budget. And almost 33% of the budget didn't spend in the cancer program. So let's talk about the international indexes of which is related to good governance, transparency, and accountability. So in this year we on 5th place in global competitiveness index, which is very positive actually. Here we have a flexible, efficient labor market, 15th place. Macroeconomic environment, 23rd. Health and education, actually, and we have these strategic programs which is implemented since 2005. Yes, we have very midterm program in education in healthcare sector in for 2005-2010, and then for 2011-2020. Business sophistication 94, innovation 84. So we cannot say that the economy is very innovative, yes, and oriented for the long-term development. Doing business, we are on, in this year 71st place out of 189, and electricity, access to electricity, construction permits, and trading across borders is very bad in Kazakhstan. Corruption Perception Index, I think that, I remember that since 2011 we're on 114th place out of 177 countries. Open Budget Index, which is conducted in 100 states around the globe, we have 48th place out of 100 states. E-Government Development Index and e-Participation, these indexes are established by United Nations organizations quite well, but I'm not sure about the e-Participation Index, which is like because level of participation of the citizens in decision-making processes is very low. So key findings. Here we find overlapping state programs and insufficient planning. Because, for instance, you can see that access to housing financed by the labor program. Because sometimes, because some of the indicators within the programs are also covers the indicators in other programs. That's why they need, because you have within your program the indicators which is related to access to education. You need to accumulate or spend some money on the indicators which you stipulated in your program, yes, in order to meet the requirements of your program. And so overlapping state programs. Lack of the international perspective, standards and practices. Actually, when we met with government officials and from simple specialists, yes, senior experts, till the vice minister, there is very low understanding of the international standards and how to achieve this. Special institutions even we have in Kazakhstan which work on the global competitiveness index, for instance, in order to achieve this, perform well in this index. Insufficient level of transparency and accountability. We have still, even Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan has a law on access to information. In Kazakhstan, we don't have such kind of legislation still. Low level of public engagement into decision-making process. We have just one-way communication from the side of government. Government says we have this, we have that, and so on. There is no or very low level of discussion, first of all, and then the third level of the efficient communication between government and the citizens, general public. It's open discussions, yes. We didn't achieve such kind of level of cooperation, let's say. Centralized budget lacking flexibility. I already said that, for instance, 2 years ago, 24 amendments, 24 times amendments introduced into the budget. Actually, typical and traditional, yes, change of the Republican level budget in April after all the firms pay the corporate income tax, and then in September, October, when the government has its tentative reports on the economy performance till 9 months. So in September and October we also, for instance, last week President Said also amended law on the Republican budget. So it says that there is low quality of the planning in Kazakhstan. Formulation of budget priorities and expenditures does not correspond with the country's strategy. So we saw the 7 dimensions of Kazakhstan strategy to 50, which is very hard to say that they corresponding to this 15 midterm developmental programs. So
okay, thank you very much.